Today is August the 16th, 2006. I'm Richard Lopez, and I will be assisting my wife, Penny Winfree Lopez, in providing an oral history of her aunt, Esther Winfree Breathitt, who was born on September 9th, 1904. We are all presently spending the summer in our home in Maggie Valley, North Carolina. Penny, you want to start?
Good afternoon, Esther. I am very, very happy to be able to record this oral history. I know that you were brought up in a very large family in Kentucky, and my father was one of your siblings. Can you begin by telling us about your mother and your father?
Well, first let me say I'm very happy to be here and have the opportunity to do this with you at this time when I'm visiting you this summer. Well, my mother was born in Henderson, Kentucky in 1868, November the 27th. I always remember her birthday is just about Thanksgiving Day. And she was the second daughter in a family with two other daughters and a brother. Her father was George O'Fallon, who was an architect. And George, let me see, we're recording. They, after her birth and the other children in her family, her father married a second time because his first wife, who was a direct descendant of Jonathan Edwards, had died, and he didn't know what to do with all these girls and this boy without someone to take care of them. So he remarried, but it was a very unfortunate marriage because the woman he married had a son, kind of disreputable reputation. And he didn't want that boy to come around his girls, and he forbade him the house. However, he did come once when my grandfather was away from home, and because he found out about it, he was furious at his wife, and he was told it by my mother's younger sister, Clara, who we called Tatty. And when he told Grandpa, she told Grandpa about this boy being there, the stepmother slapped her, and it made my grandfather furious, and it caused them to separate. So my grandfather didn't know what to do with these three girls, and one of them was of marriageable age, Jenny, and she married and went to Missouri with her husband. But my mother, who was Mabel O'Fallon, he sent to a Catholic school in Birmingham, Kentucky.
Was that a boarding school?
It was a boarding school, yes. I think also she had a relative there, and it may have been my grandfather's mother. However, there at that school she met a girl, Susan Winfree, from Christian County, Kentucky, who invited her to visit her in their home. When she went to visit, she met not only my father, who was the seventh son in a family of 14 children, 7 boys and 6 girls. And she went to visit the Susan Winfree, who met Alec Winfree, who fell in love with my mother. It seems there was a little rivalry between my father and his brother Alec, and Dad won out. And Mabel and Matthew were married. Now Matthew was about 7 years older than my mother, and he was a young farmer in Christian County, Kentucky. So after they were married, my grandfather built them, he being an architect, built them a beautiful home in Christian County, and that's where they lived to begin their marriage. And they lived there for the next 10 years, and my mother gave birth to 8 children at that place, of which I was the 8th one.
Can you tell us about life on the farm in that particular
I don't remember
place?
much about that particular farm because I think it was a very commodious place. But after I was born, my father's health was not very good, so they moved to Colorado, and he went in business with his brother Alec in a dry goods store, and they didn't do any farming there. So, but after a couple of years, there was a panic, and it caused them to break up their business. And my father's health had become much better, Colorado air, and they moved back to Kentucky.
Well, I understand there was some other family that went out there beside his brother with you to
When they moved to
Colorado.
to Colorado, my father took not only all his 8 children and my mother's younger sister, who was a spinster, and we called Tatty, and took his horses and his mules and his farming equipment, and even his doctor who had delivered all of their children with him to Colorado. There we lived for a few years, during which time my mother gave birth to 2 more children. One, a boy, Frank, who was 2 years younger than I, and a stillborn child. My mother was very ill, but fortunately, having their own doctor with them, she recovered without even going to a hospital. And he moved his family back to Kentucky, Christian County.
Okay. Tell us about life back in Christian County.
Well, of course, he had to farm us all out for a period of time because he had to look for a place for us to live. And he finally bought a home on the Bradshaw Pike, on which the residence has been burned down. And we all moved out there. It was about 5 miles from Hopkinsville. We moved there and had to live in cabins on the farm until they could build another home for the family to move into. At that time, the house we moved into was big enough. It had about 5 bedrooms, and but it didn't have very many conveniences. We had no electricity, and we had no running water, and
About bathrooms.
no bathrooms. We had pitchers and bowls in every room for sponge baths, and that's what we had to put up with for a good many years before my father really got settled into the farming business. But he turned out to be a very successful farmer with a good reputation at it. He was raising tobacco as a big crop, and in addition to that, he had corn and wheat and clover, alfalfa, and every known vegetable in the garden that you could think of. That's how he fed his pretty large family at that time, which consisted of 10 children.
What about your meat?
Well, of course, we had we raised hogs and sheep and caught, and we had a lot of fowls, chicken, turkeys, every known fowl, and and raised all the vegetables in the garden, that everything you could think of. It was a 300-acre farm.
Who did the farming?
Well, of course, the boys were old enough by that time. The older boys were old enough to do a lot of work on the farm. But in addition to that, there was a lot of help available. And my father hired people, and there were certain people that he loaned some of his land out to what we call sharecroppers. And they would raise their own crops, of which he would get a portion for his rent for the property. And in that way, I guess he had a good deal of income coming in from his sharecroppers. During the harvest of wheat, he had a threshing machine, and he would move his threshing machine from our place where he threshed our wheat to the neighbors' places where he threshed their wheat. That was another way that he had income. But we didn't have a lot of income. But it seemed to be sufficient for us to have everything we needed.
How did your mother manage with all those children and cooking and sewing and...
Well, sewing she did a lot of. She sewed for us girls. There were 4 of us girls. And of course the younger ones could wear some of the clothes that the older ones had. But she was pretty much always at that treadle of the machine. And not only that, she made shirts for boys and everything. As for the laundry, we had that done by servants. And my mother had servants in the house for cooking and any household needs that she had for cleaning. She had servants. And servants were very cheap in those days. It seems to me we only paid our cook $6 a month. But of course, all of her living expenses were taken care of, and she was provided with a home, but it was practically nothing in the way of money because we just didn't have that much.
Tell me about some of the activities that your family may have participated in, for instance, Christmas or any kind of celebrations or...
Well, for social life, my mother belonged to a book club, and all the ladies of the neighborhood would meet monthly and review the different book that they had read and swap the books around. And then at the end of the year, Christmas, each one would take turns having a family party. And all the families, children would be invited with the grown-ups, and we really filled up the houses with children and food and fun during those Christmas times.
Tell me about your personal Christmas back then. I mean, did you have Christmas trees? Did you have Santa
No,
Claus?
we never had a Christmas tree until my younger brother. Dining room table, which for every meal accommodated 13 or 14 people, and each one had its own separate place at this table. So at this table setting, Santa was supposed to come and leave in our plates candy and oranges and apples and firecrackers and Roman candles and sparklers, and also whatever toys we were given. And everybody had at least one toy, maybe one wearing apparel. And they were bounteous Christmases. I don't know how they did it on the little money they had. But in the meantime, one of our brothers would have gotten up and lit the fire so that we were all up to see what Santa Claus had brought long before the sun came up.
You're talking about lighting the fire.